The Public Relations Officer of the Gambia Fire and Rescue Service shed light on the criticisms levied against them. The Army's agricultural venture won't be out of context, CDS Drama says at the ongoing nationwide tour. And elsewhere, ECOWAS Parliament launched an initiative which seeks to give deprived and abandoned children, street children, a voice. These and more coming on the news text. It's 2:30 in Banjul. This is the news desk coming to you live on iAfrica TV, and I am Julde Njai Suare. Now the news in detail. The Gambia Fire and Rescue Service is regularly under intense criticism for its way of responding to outbreaks and emergency situations. The Public Relations Officer of the Fire and Rescue Service throws some lights on some of the limitations in their operations in saving lives and properties from fire outbreaks. Fatoumata Kasim tells us more.
One of the challenges facing the fire and rescue team in their public services is timely intervention in disaster zones. The toll-free service in the name of fire service barely responds to public demands for rescue from flames-related disasters. These and related concerns compel the Public Relations Officer of the Fire and Rescue Service, Pate Jiba, to explore some of the excuses held on by the firefighters in response to national duties. He outlined the issue of timely and accurate communication from the public as one of the constraints faced by the fire service.
I would just like to mention some certain constraints or maybe give some advices to society in order that we live symbiotically so that we can offer the best services that the people need. The first I will say is to definitely talk about the time that the fire department normally being called. When the fire services is called at a time that the worst has happened, it becomes difficult for them to do an effective job for the people. So I'm appealing to society to give us the calls at the right time so that we can react. Although firemanship is all about reacting, it's no proactive job, it's reacting. But of course, if we are called at the right time, our reaction will be very positive. Maybe lives might not be lost and property damage will be reduced.
Just like with the police advocacy for community policing, PRO Jiba underscored the need for all exclusiveness on firemanship, nothing that success is better attained together. The fire service is confronted with shortage in fire engines with barely sufficient human resources during firefighting operations.
So few will be at the risk zone doing the job. So we will need the assistance of the general public in making sure that society conforms themselves, according to standards. And when we say according to standards, what I'm talking about is to make sure that you allow the firefighter to do his job, but not to pull the hoses behind his back. If you pull the hose or cut the hose line, water will not find the branch man at the end of the stream. What is going to happen is massive collateral damage and probably loss of life and damage to property. So firefighters, in one way of assisting us is to allow them do the job. In not allowing them do the job is like creating more tension.
The public does not lose sight of the common excuse of lack of water by firefighters even in the middle of operations, a reason for which operatives are sometimes under attack. Spokesman of the Fire and Rescue Service explained the challenges in shortage in water on the types and quality of machine at the disposal of the firefighters.
The other thing here is the assaults. We used to have a lot of assaults from society. We have some people throwing stones on fire engines and on the firefighters. And imagine it can cause some kind of injury and it can cause some kind of damage to the machines that we use. These machines are sophisticated machines and expensive. Of course, they don't carry much water. All they carry is probably 2,000 liters, that which is relatively too small. And the engine can be emptied within 3 minutes. And imagine if an entire structure is burning, a tank capacity of 2,000 liters is not sufficient enough to take care of that job. And by virtue of that and by virtue of the proximity of hydrants, sometimes the job is not easy.
Jiba used this opportunity to urge for public understanding and support, saying all hands together will pave the way for a better output from the fire and rescue service. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Fatoumata Kasim.
The Fire and Rescue Service PRO explains some of the challenges encountered by the firefighters. And of course, with that, we move on. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has shown dissatisfaction and disappointment with the European Union regarding access to COVID-19 vaccines. During its weekly press briefing on Thursday, the Africa Center for Disease Control called on the EU to stay away from policies that will complicate the fight against the global pandemic. Daisise tells us more.
Given the worrisome trajectory of COVID-19 vaccine distribution across the world, the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention is disappointed with the European Union for marginalization of the African continent. So far, about less than 1% of the African population has been vaccinated, thanks to unequitable distribution of vaccines globally. In what appears to be adding some salt into the injury, the European Union chose not to recognize vaccines administered in Africa, including the AstraZeneca, for travel pass within the EU. This move, according to the Africa CDC, might make vaccine provision for Africa even more harder, because the continent depends on these supplies under the WHO COVID-19 provision. In this light, the Director of Africa CDC, John Kensong, called on the European to do away with principles that will make it further difficult to fight COVID-19.
A vaccine that has been supported by the Europeans and supported by COVAX, supported by WHO, will not be allowed to be on the list of vaccines that were recognized through the Green Pass process in Europe. We've always said when this pandemic started, that we should always use science, data to drive decisions. And I don't think this is one that was based on science and data, because if you look at the neutralizing antibody levels, which all these vaccines are generating against the spike protein, that the vaccine, that is the AZ vaccine produced in India, produces very high neutralizing antibodies. I think that is what, if they were producing less quality neutralizing antibodies, you probably argue that based on that, they are not fit to be recognized. So we are really calling on the European to stay away from such policies that will further undermine and make it difficult for us to fight this pandemic there.
The zooming tough policies from the EU regarding global fight against COVID-19 appear to be a reminder of lessons learned that Africa cannot depend on countries for vaccine. John faced the pressure to assure that Africa can eliminate the pandemic by the end of next year, pending the availability of enough vaccines.
The fact of the matter is the EU has vaccine factories. It has vaccine production centers across Europe. Not a single dose, not one vial has left a European factory for Africa. Okay, when we've gone to talk to their manufacturers, they tell us that they are completely maxed out, meeting the needs of Europe. We are referred to India, okay, where a number of manufacturers exist that are manufacturing vaccines like the AstraZeneca vaccine under license. Okay, so Europe has to decide. You can't say you support us. They have vaccinated so many of their own people that they can now watch football without masks. Okay, our people have not been vaccinated. Less than 1% of our population has been vaccinated.
Strife Masiwa, the coordinator of African Vaccine Acquisition Team, expressed Africa's disappointment with the European Union for the fact that not a single dose has left European factories for Africa.
First of all, let's remain optimistic that the efforts that people like Strive, Professor Benedict Orama, Dr. Vera Songwed, and others are working every night and from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. To acquire these vaccines would yield fruits. That way, in the next 12 months or so, we vaccinate at speed and at scale. If we do that, and the population cooperate, and I did share some information with you today on how much countries are using their vaccines, which is a very good indicator of that. If we have a predictable supply of vaccines, the vaccines will be used, then we can defeat this pandemic. We can break the backbone of this pandemic by the end of next year.
As of July 2021, 5.5 million COVID-19 cases have been reported across the continent. This figure accounts for 3% of the total cases reported globally. Over 142,000 Africans have died from the virus, while 4.8 million people have recovered since the start of the pandemic. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Daisy.
Africa CDC calls on the EU to stay away from policies that will undermine the continent's effort in the fight against the global pandemic. Now, in their efforts to combat pollution, Ugandans embark on recycling of plastic waste into items such as bags and mats, among others. The trade is now a source of survival for some Ugandan citizens who make it their way at various garbage sites in search of plastic waste. We have more of that in this report.
Chinawataka, a slum in Uganda's capital Kampala. More than 20,000 people live here. Most of their garbage ends up in places like these. But for this team, the straws are treasure, not trash.
We can collect like one sack because we can't find like 3 sacks at the same garbage. We usually move collecting.
Straws and plastic bottles make up an estimated 600 tons of plastics consumed in Uganda every day. 73-year-old Benedicta Nanyonga is at the forefront of waste management in this area. Through her organization, the Chinawataka Women's Initiative, she has built a movement to eliminate single-use plastics.
So many people around, you find that some, they do come and we have collected this. In returns, you give a token to her to encourage her or him to see that the plastic is being collected from the place where they are.
The collected plastics, mostly straws, are then turned into sellable merchandise. These are some of the products made here: mats, school bags, and even hand wallets. They are sold to help keep the project running, and there are plans to build a bigger training center so more young people can learn these skills. Harriet Nachaine has been here for 2 months now. She is one of over 6,000 young volunteers that have gained skills from the initiative.
I've got the skill of weaving because since my childhood I never involved myself in weaving.
While Benedicta has made significant progress, she still faces challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has kept many trainees away. The lack of proper tools is making work difficult.
Another problem is pressing the straws because it makes the fingers sometimes to swollen. And also it is a big problem that when we are pressing the straws, it decreases our production.
For Nanyonga, there is no giving up on the fight against plastics. She wants to continue raising public awareness, straw by straw.
Ugandans recycle plastic waste with the aim of combating environmental pollution. Now, Tunisian authorities have deployed the army to different parts of the country to enforce the new lockdowns. The new lockdown is meant to curtail the growing number of new infections in several regions in the country, which have left health workers worried of the situation. However, not everyone is in support of the move, especially the business community, who criticize the government for imposing another lockdown. Details in this report.
Tunisian authorities have mobilized the national army in several regions where a full lockdown has been announced.
The government will impose a strict general lockdown and isolate any town, city or region where the number of infections is over 400 cases per 100,000 inhabitants over the past 14 days. The regional authorities will ensure enforcement of restrictions imposed during curfew hours.
The government will ban all gatherings until July 11th. The COVID-19 task force revealed that the health system can no longer cope with the high number of infections and deaths.
The daily number of deaths is 82 cases this week, while it was between 52 and 62 deaths last week. The number of deaths recorded exceeded the health authorities' expectations.
Many Tunisians, especially in the private sector, have criticized the new restrictive measures. Small business owners at the central market in Tunis say they do not believe in the deterrent effect of curfew enforcement.
It is unacceptable to impose new curfew hours. This decision affects all businesses. Unlike civil servants, we cannot earn a living if we don't work. People need to wear face masks and get vaccinated. This is the government's responsibility.
The Scientific Committee to combat the coronavirus called for a national lockdown for at least 6 weeks to break the chain of infection. However, the Prime Minister's cabinet rejected the proposal. In May 2020, Tunisia recorded 0 new coronavirus cases after 2 months of full lockdown. Experts assert that another general lockdown in Tunisia will have negative repercussions on the population and plunge the country into a social and economic crisis.
That story in Tunisia will take us to our first break. Still to come, it's more local and international news, so stay tuned.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put into constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is the news desk coming your way live on iAfrica TV, and I am Julde Suare. Now to the rest of our stories. 2 years ago, the government of the Gambia announced its resolve to set the Gambia Armed Forces on large-scale farming to boost the country's food production. The debate on whether or not farming should be among the areas of intervention of the army died later on, despite concerns that the idea would make the army a political subject. In the military tour, establishments to various military deployments across the country by the Chief of Defense Staff said agricultural ventures appears to be among the visionary areas of focus for the men in uniform. Details of that in this report.
The revival of the Army's agricultural venture came as CDS Yakuba Drame visited the Banjulunden vegetable garden set up by former President Jammeh. On the farmlands, members of the Gambia Armed Forces are skillful and experienced in the production of rice and nuts, mainly thanks to their choiceless engagements on the agricultural visions of the former president. However, The Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Yakuba A. Drame, is firm that the Back to the Land mission is purely within the premises of the law.
So if we decide to go into agriculture, Gambia Armed Forces, it is not out of context, but rather it's a constitutional obligation. You may recall we're very active in 3 fields: health, education, and engineering. We've been in those fields for many years, and our performance in those fields is exemplary. Take, for instance, health. We have clinics in all our major barracks. And those who frequent the clinics, 65% of them are brothers and sisters outside uniform.
The Banjulunding vegetable garden measures 14.8 hectares, is being cultivated for different varieties of vegetable in the families of potatoes, garden eggs, and okra, among a lot more. The military agricultural venture, according to the CDS, will add to the fields of education, engineering, and health, all on which soldiers are very active. Under the leadership of CDS Drame, their intervention is somehow a situation of better lead than never.
One area we've not ventured in, to meet the desire of every Gambians, is agriculture. But what is more important, the will and determination is now there to venture into agriculture as well. It is better late than never. Yes, we had failed to start earlier on, but now I believe we can get ourselves into agriculture. Of course, with the necessary support of the line ministry. And this is where I think the Minister of Agriculture could be of tremendous help, given the vast experience and expertise they have in that field.
From the kick-off, the Army will seek strong partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture to boost their desire to provide enough food for the Gambia.
So, teaming up with agriculture, I want to believe that's the wisest decision we can make as an institution. We lack those capacities, we lack those capabilities, but one thing we have the manpower. We have the discipline force, which is the labor force. And not only that, we have the determination to move forward. If this is our strength, and if we can get the support from agriculture, I want to believe we can achieve what we've set for ourselves in terms of meeting our desire to provide food for this country.
Starting last month with an 18-hectare land, the men in uniform are bracing up for a vegetable cover, forming so far beds of garden eggs, okra, and sweet potatoes. The tomato runners are all the crippling stems of trees and canopy setups under the protection of the country's gunmen. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
Now, in a bid to cope the rise in the number of children on the street, the ECOWAS Parliament, in collaboration with Yadai, a rehabilitation center in Nigeria, has launched an initiative to give voice to the deprived and abandoned children. The International Labour Organization 2017 report stated that 168 million children globally are engaged in child labor, and 15 million of them are Nigerians. Details in this report.
I'm sorry. Children right now, as I speak to you, they sleep with animals at abattoirs because they don't have anywhere to sleep. And there's very little we can do.
Pains of a compassionate child rights activist compelled to bring change to a situation that's long troubled Nigeria and West Africa, Zainab Khalil set up Yadai, a center that focuses on the rehabilitation of children who are abandoned, many that are victims of abuse or child labor. The center recently partnered with the ECOWAS Parliament and UNICEF to launch the Street Children Parliament, an initiative aimed at giving street children a voice.
And what we intend doing is drawing the attention of the government, bringing the children, let them tell their story, giving them a louder voice. And when you give them a louder voice, you now draw the attention of government to do the needful. And it was as a result of that that we even drew ECOWAS.
The International Labour Organization's 2017 report showed an estimated 168 million children globally are engaged in child labor. 15 million of them are in Nigeria, the highest number of working children in West Africa. In the face of issues like abject poverty and Islamist insurgency, children are forced into the streets to fend for themselves and their families.
So you find children uncared for, not by the mother, not by the father, and what do you expect them to do? They go to the street to find a way of sustaining themselves. Or are you talking about the insurgency? You see IDP camps all over the place, you know, internal displaced persons all over the place. And from there, these children move to the street because they have to survive.
Child rights activists say the network of support for children is still very weak in West Africa, and it will take more than establishing a street children parliament to close the gaps. Governments would need to enforce laws and policies geared towards upholding the rights and safety of children.
Well, that's all from me and the rest of the team. But for more of these and others, you can join us in our subsequent news bulletins. Many thanks indeed for the pleasure of your company, and do have a nice day.
Our son is